This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance.
I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and tonight we are going to be discussing the Epstein network, which is back in the news for several reasons. We're going to be talking about Larry Fink, BlackRock, and they're partnering with Donald Trump to bring about the technocratic vision for the North American technate. We'll also be talking about this alleged measles outbreak and how Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s positions seem to be shifting and how, as expected, his followers are defending him at all costs and don't want to hear anything contrary to the idea that he is, the great Maha King here to save the day. We have a third story. Let me just check real quick on our notes what we'll be talking about. Jeffrey Epstein, talking about RFK, talking about measles, talking about BlackRock. Maybe that'll be it. We'll see where we go and where we end up at. But thank you, everybody who's joining us tonight. Right now, we are live on Odyssey. We are live on Rockfin, on 2 YouTube channels. We're live on Twitter, live on a couple Facebook pages, and this will be later posted on BitChute, on Substack, and on my Spotify channel, on my podcasting platform. Shout out to everybody who listens on the podcasting places. For those who don't know, yes, you can find the Conscious Resistance Network, the Conscious Resistance Podcast, and all of my content I produce, all the interviews on podcasting platforms if you prefer to listen. Of course, the best place to find my content and to find the work that I've been doing for the last 12 years at the Conscious Resistance is at theconsciousresistance.com, which you can see right here. Go to our website. Highly encourage you to bookmark the website. Don't depend on social media, whether it's Twitter or some other platform you think is free speech, to show you everything I do. And one other side note, I find it a little irritating whenever I run into people on the internet and they say they quote unquote follow or know my work. And what they mean by that is they follow me on social media. Social media is not my work, my friends. I am more than just a social media commenter. So if you're just following me on social media, especially Facebook, Twitter, etc., that's not my work. It's a place I post my work. It's a place where I post my thoughts. But my actual work is at theconsciousresistance.com, or my articles are at thelast.americanvagabond.com, or my documentary series is at thepyramidofpower.net. My books, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State and the Conscious Resistance Trilogy, can be found online and on my website as well. That is where my work is at. So I just want to remind you guys, if you ever wondering, where's Derrick's work? Where will I find a report from Derrick? Because I get asked this often, unfortunately. The answer is always theconsciousresistance.com. And you can find the show notes for everything we're going to discuss. They'll be posted tonight after tonight's show. You can also find a new article written by contributor Don Villa Jr., The End of Fiat, Multiple States Move to Recognize Gold and Silver as Legal Currency. And you can also find 3 presentations that I gave. Some of you know I just came back from Costa Rica. I was in Costa Rica for 2 weeks doing presentations, participating in various events. And I gave 3 talks, all focused on the exit and build strategy, building parallel systems, thinking holistically. If you're interested in solutions, and I wish more of you were, this is the place to check, guys. Tonight, we're going to talk about a lot of the problems and the crazy geopolitics and stuff. But honestly, I think that the information contained in these 3 presentations I gave in Costa Rica, which you can find at theconsciousresistance.com and all of our channels, are vastly more important than you guys knowing all the details I'm going to share with you. These details are important. Otherwise, I wouldn't be wasting my breath. But if more people were focused on the solutions, and if more people tuned into these solutions, in particular the ideas that I think I present, which are important philosophical and strategic ideas, then I think the world would be better off. You can go to theconsciousresistance.com. You can search through investigations, documentaries, books, learn more about agorism, and you can check right here and see all of my presentations I've given since April 2011 when I first started speaking publicly. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of talks over the years. I'm sure you'll find something to be inspiring. Also, if you want to get deeper into our work, this is our categories where you can find everything I've produced on this website since 2012. We're going to update it soon because there's some categories that aren't represented in here because I've covered quite a bit over the years. But everything you want to know about my work, you can pretty much find there. So again, invite you guys to sign up for our email list and stay plugged into what we're doing there. Now let's go ahead and let's get right into it. We're going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein tonight. We're going to start with Jeffrey Epstein and, more importantly, the Jeffrey Epstein network, the network behind and above and around Jeffrey Epstein, who was really just a front man for a much bigger thing. He wasn't just a man acting alone who had depravities and things about himself that we all know about at this point, but a man who was exploited by other people who knew they could use him in a way to blackmail other people that they also would like to take advantage of, and use that information, that blackmail, to achieve their various geopolitical goals. And of course, Epstein is connected to several intelligence agencies. Many people suspect Israeli intelligence, different opinions about which Israeli intelligence agency that would be. Also, allegations and suspicions of being connected to the CIA. And then, of course, through Ghislaine Maxwell and her father, Robert Maxwell, connections to the UK intelligence. So several intelligence connections there. And if you know my work, you guys know that I started researching Jeffrey Epstein back in 2016. My first Epstein report was documenting this story and talking about how there's this crazy story out there about this rich billionaire who has an island and who is abusing people. And he got a sweetheart deal, and most people had never heard of this. You can find this all at theconsciousresistance.com. Go look at our Epstein network page. This eventually led me to going to some of Epstein's hearings in 2017 and getting to interview Brad Edwards, who's one of the lead attorneys who was investigating Jeffrey Epstein, who I've since learned is also a suspicious man himself. But nevertheless, this was back when I was investigating this stuff in 2017 and early in this story, well before this was breaking mainstream and before Jeffrey Epstein's arrest. In fact, in 2018, I released my documentary, Bringing Down Jeffrey Epstein, which came out, I think, October 2018, 1 month after I visited Epstein's Palm Beach house as part of my investigations. And I've covered much of the things that are now being released over the years, including with Whitney Webb, but also in my own reporting, talking about Jean-Luc Brunel, who's the French connection that so many people don't know anything about. Talked about Les Wexner, of course, and Les Wexner, his connections from the Limited brand and Victoria's Secret. Right here, you can see these two and how he's connected to Israeli intelligence via the Mega Group, which we'll talk more about in just a moment, and on and on. And of course, documenting Donald Trump's connections to Jeffrey Epstein and these false claims that Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago related to abuse of one of the members' daughters. I've fact-checked that several times. Here, you can find that all here. So I think I've got the credentials to understand what's happening with Jeffrey Epstein and what's been going on. In the last couple of weeks, Epstein has been back in the news for numerous reasons. For one, of course, with Trump being back in the White House and promises, or at least people believing Trump promised that he was going to release the Epstein files. In reality, he never really did. In fact, I've shared clips over the last year where Trump was being interviewed by Fox News, and he kind of said plainly, he's like, well, we'll think about it, but we don't want to hurt anybody's reputation or, do anything bad towards anybody. So we might not release everything. So there was already sort of doubt cast that he's actually going to go through with this. Nevertheless, with the appointment of his Attorney General Pam Bondi, many people thought, okay, they're going in there, and in Kash Patel at the FBI, they're going to start releasing all the Epstein documents. And you guys know this by now. Like I said, I've been off for 2 weeks, so I'm kind of catching up, but also going to get to you guys to some new information that I think is really the most relevant in the ongoing investigation of the Epstein network. And Pam Bondi gave out some binders to various right-wing Zionist influencers. And in the end, and this is a nice thread I found about this, came out, this all happened about a week ago or so, last week. And this picture here just shows some of the different influencers who are involved: Libs of TikTok, Mike Cernovich, DC Drano, Emily Austin. And it goes through and just showing these people and their associations with Zionism, with the ADL, with different things like that. And I think that it's important to understand this. So my first thought when I saw this, before the Attorney General website ended up posting the documents on their website, and that ended up being a big nothing burger with nothing new, I was already skeptical. Like, okay, guys, I'm not trusting this release of Epstein documents because they're handing them to right-wing influencers, and especially if these people don't ever post this stuff public. Again, the AG did end up posting the information public. We all went through it. There's nothing new, no big bombshell. A lot of people were upset, even in the Trump universe and MAGA, and people are hoping for more. Now, since that time, we've seen various rumors circulating. This was actually around the same time that the files were getting released, and this one was that a whistleblower has exposed that the FBI has begun permanently erasing files that may be connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, this is just breaking from some random anonymous account on Twitter, and I guarantee you a lot of people saw that, retweeted it, thought it was truth. There's been no real evidence to make that clear or to back that up, that there has been destruction of evidence. Now, of course, we can guess, like, surely if there was any sort of evidence related to Epstein sitting in a file still somewhere, it's probably been destroyed a long time ago. I've been saying this for a while. It's either sitting in some Israeli intelligence safe somewhere, or it's hidden somewhere super secret. It's not just sitting around labeled Epstein client list or something like this. So I think that's one thing that people need to understand, that it's been 20 years since Jeffrey Epstein's first arrest, and sweetheart deal came a couple years later. So in those 20 years, when they first raided his house and walked through and showed videos of the house, which we have some of those videos. In fact, we included those in my documentary. I don't think those files are just sitting around waiting for us to find them. So I also think, and this is, I can be objective here and say, yes, I can imagine a situation where certain elements of the FBI or CIA or whatever would destroy evidence to protect themselves or to cover up things. Like I just said, it probably happened a long time ago. However, I also think when you combine these two things with these releases of documents to right-wing influencers, and then claims of interference and documents being destroyed, that it kind of is very easily setting up a narrative that, well, Trump was trying to release the files, but the dang deep state got in the way again, and they destroyed everything. Again, could be true, could be accurate. I am extremely skeptical of that whole argument. As you can imagine, I'm not somebody who just blindly trusts or supports Donald Trump. And I definitely think we should all be very suspicious and skeptical and all those good things. My point here is I very much do worry, and I encourage everybody who is paying attention, watching it later, to be skeptical of any sort of narratives that might pop up around Jeffrey Epstein and this idea that, if it wasn't for the deep state, Trump would have finally got the truth out. I think we're witnessing a limited hangout. There may be more Epstein documents to come, because as you can see in some of these binders, they were labeled phase 1. And in fact, let's just go DOJ. Where is the Attorney General? I'm going to open up the website real quick since I'm talking to you guys right now, I don't want to misspeak. Let's go ahead and look right now in the latest press releases from the Office of the Attorney General. As you can see right here, you go to the official website, you go to news, and then it'll give you all the latest releases. So they got stuff about cartels, United States arrest ISIS-K member, attack planner for role in killing of U.S. military service members. I bet that's probably more propaganda. We can go on here, but there's nothing new about Epstein. In fact, we'll just go ahead and search Epstein and see what comes up, just to make sure there's been nothing new released while I'm recording this. Pam Bondi releases first phase of declassified Epstein files. So there they all are, and you can go through and look through them. And like I said, nothing in there has been new. So that was one reason Epstein was already in the news, and people were greatly disappointed. The other reason is, of course, Ian Carroll was just on Joe Rogan's show 2 days ago. You guys know, who followed my work since before the election, that Ian Carroll and I have had a lot of back and forth, mostly friendly and some shit talking, but he's a grown adult. He can handle himself. So many of you out there think you need to defend somebody, like, stop being mean to people. I think that we're all adults and we can handle the talking shit to each other occasionally. And Ian definitely has thick skin. And I've told him to his face when we had a phone conversation last week. We were discussing doing another talk together at the end of this month, where we're going to go over 60 days with Trump in office. What's the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we'll get into some deep stuff there. But I was telling Ian that I don't really know if I can trust you or if I do trust you, but I'm willing to keep having these discussions because I think it's good for people, and also for people, honestly, to call him out and his shortcomings and his blind spots. But he went on Joe Rogan. The podcast has 1.9, nearly 2 million views in the last 2 days. So that's pretty cool for him. I know he's getting a big boost from it. And there was also a lot of discussion on conspiracies in this document or in this interview, much related to Jeffrey Epstein. And of course, Whitney Webb, my colleague and a co-founder of the Independent Media Alliance, she was mentioned throughout this discussion. And many of us, including Whitney, have asked, like, why has Joe Rogan not brought her on the show? I would love to go on the show, even though I don't trust Joe Rogan, for the opportunity to ask Joe Rogan, why do you keep platforming people like Peter Thiel without a single hard question? Why do you continue to promote this idea that Elon Musk is a good guy? Why did you kiss Trump's ass in that crappy interview and then pretend like the ear scar, which wasn't there, related to the assassination that we're told happened, was all normal? Like, these are the kind of questions and discussions I want to have. I don't want to just go into Joe Rogan's podcast and ham it up and chop it up with him like bros, but that's more what Ian did. And I know people will tell me I'm just jealous, I'm just mad, all these kind of things I've heard over the last couple of days. It's so funny how people identify with these personalities. My criticism and concerns for this have been that, on one hand, well, let's start with the positive things. He did cover Les Wexner. He did cover the mega group, a lot of different things. He sourced most of his information from Whitney. I've been reporting on this as well, like I said a few moments ago. Other people have, but his main source of information has been Whitney, which I understand. Whitney's an amazing researcher and very in-depth writer, to, you know, maybe to a fault to some people, too much detail. But she has 2 massive books on the Epstein network showing how Epstein was just a part of a much bigger thing going on that does relate to mafia and organized crime, much of which is Jewish and which are connected to intelligence networks. And Ian dropped a lot of truth bombs on this, and it's going to be seen by probably close to 3 million plus people, you know, over time, 5 to 10 million people, listened to by millions more on Spotify and elsewhere. That's a good thing, I think, for the truth. That doesn't mean I fully trust Ian or his alleged blind spots, because, as you guys know, in that 2-hour conversation that Ian and I had prior to the election, I educated him on Peter Thiel and Peter Thiel's connection to Donald Trump, and Peter Thiel's connections to the Bilderberg Group, and Peter Thiel's connections through Palantir to the CIA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So on and on. So I've given Ian this information, and he continues to sort of just like, oh yeah, I haven't had time to look into Peter Thiel, but I'll probably get to that soon. And then even on the podcast with Joe Rogan, he sort of dismissed Whitney as unhinged. Now, as I'm going to show in a moment, he did go ahead and like put out a video and correct the record and say, I didn't mean to call Whitney unhinged. It's just that when you get past her Epstein stuff, she talks about the technocracy, and that's a little bit too crazy for some people to understand. And it's like, it's not crazy if you pay attention and if you read the research. I mean, I wrote a book on this called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State in 2019, published January 2020, 5 years ago. And people like Patrick Wood, I have his book somewhere on here. He's been writing about this stuff for decades. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't mean Ian or nobody else can talk about it. But the point is, Ian likes to play this sort of like, I'm just a dude searching for information, I'm not a real journalist, whenever somebody calls him on his shortcomings. And I think that's just a weak fallback point to sort of like, whoops, I haven't talked about it, but I'll get to it one day. And Ian told me on the phone when we talked that he is allegedly going to start going more in the direction of myself and Whitney and talking about technocracy and calling out Musk and some of these things. And I hope he does. And I also wish that if he already knows those things, why plan it out and say, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to start talking about these things. Why not just start talking about it? I think Ian knows that he gained a big crowd by boosting Trump and boosting RFK. And yeah, he's called out some of the things over the time. I'll mention some of them in a little bit when it relates to measles. But also, I think he just remains completely blind, whether willingly or otherwise, to Elon Musk's technocratic influence, to Peter Thiel's influence. And I've covered this ad nauseum, and I will continue to cover it. This isn't about being jealous. This isn't about being insecure. I'm glad Ian's getting those numbers. Good for him. I've been doing this for 15 years. You think I don't want those numbers? Of course I want those numbers, and I'm working towards it every day. And with your support, I will continue to grow. And I see my numbers growing. So I'm not insecure. I'm not jealous. It has nothing to do with that petty human shit. It's about wanting the truth and the biggest truth to get out. I know some people say, well, Derrick, Ian is better at communicating this message than you and Whitney because you guys are too deep, or y'all, you know, your articles are too long, or you're like, you know, level 10 and most people are normies starting at the beginning, and Ian's good at communicating that. that is a talent to be able to communicate things. And as we say, dumb them down. Dumbing things down is not something I have a great interest in. For example, our good friend, James Corbett, also a member of the Independent Media Alliance, James has said that he has no interest in making TikTok clips of his documentaries and videos. He's happy when other people choose to do so. Now, we could argue, James, you're missing out. If you would just take your amazing work that we all know is so great and clip it into these 30-second sound bites, then you could reach the TikTok generation and help wake up more and more people in the way that Ian has done. That's not something James has an interest in. He's in his 40s, going on 50. He's got a family. That's just not his role. I, on the other side, I do try to dabble with that a little bit. I have a friend who runs a TikTok account for the Conscious Resistance, and a friend who makes clips for Facebook and for Telegram and things like that. And for example, this podcast is going to get clipped up and cut out and put out there. So I understand the value of that, and I understand the differences in the way we communicate the message. I guess my main criticism and concern has been, of course, speculation about Ian's rapid rise, his apparent blind spots, and then the way he doesn't really kind of step into them. But now let's look at Whitney's response here. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I will link all this stuff for those who aren't on Twitter. You can find it if you just go to Whitney Webb, her account. And like I said, she was responding to the post from Ian of being live on Joe Rogan's podcast. And then Ian came back and responded and said, I hope this drives people to buy and read your book. And I did a live stream today where I clarified that I did not intend to imply that you were unhinged, but that some people unfamiliar with your work may think that on first impression because of how deep your articles can go. Wished I'd chosen my words more carefully in the moment. And there's, I think he commented again. In addition, Whitney, I really appreciate this clarification, because what Whitney said is that she doesn't believe Epstein was part of the Mossad, but as I said, part of this larger intelligence network. And there are researchers out there like Johnny Vedmore and others who say it's nothing to do with the Mossad. That's a PSYOP. That's a limited hangout. It's related to the CIA. Again, everybody's got their own opinions based on it. At the end of the day, we probably will never truly know. We can look and point in different directions and see what connections there are. And there are a lot. Ian acknowledged, he says, I completely agree with you that your work on technocratic forces in Epstein's network and beyond are extremely important to expose and scrutinize. I have done some work on it, but I intend to do more in the coming months, as I see that as one of the main concerns about the Trump admin. And yeah, so that's good. And what he's responding to is that Whitney kind of said in the end that if people really understood her work, that they would understand that Technocracy is a part of the Epstein network. And really, when you understand Epstein's connections to Peter Thiel, Epstein's interest in transhumanism and things of that sort, you can kind of see how that bigger network was also part of the Technocracy concern that myself and others have been screaming about. Whitney says, quote, another thing I'd like to clarify is the implication that my historical reporting on the Epstein case is commendable, while my more current reporting on Technocracy is significantly less so. My book on Epstein concludes with an entire chapter discussing how Epstein became irrelevant and thus expendable because the union of big tech with the intelligence apparatus, particularly those intelligence agencies most corrupted by the Epstein network, with a major focus on Palantir and its co-founder, Peter Thiel. While Ian is an admitted fan of my book, the reporting on Technocracy, which he describes as more of a turnoff for most than my Epstein book, is actually in the book on Epstein itself and is arguably the main conclusion as it is related to the present from the book. There, I note that Palantir is the privatization and recreation of a nefarious neocon project developed by top figures from the Iran-Contra scandal, and how tools like it and its Unit 8200 developed equivalents from Israel have amassed so much information on us and can plant false or incriminating evidence on a person's device. This is like spyware that I've talked about. That is readily available, and the Unit 8200 from the Israelis network are doing it. This is like the Pegasus project, and there's others that I've written about recently. So basically she's saying they don't need blackmail sex tapes anymore because they can just plant evidence on people using this vast network. And Whitney says, I'm not sure if Ian has discussed Peter Thiel or Palantir very much, but a lot of my concerns about Technocracy in the current administration are intimately related to both, and those concerns are very well documented in One Nation under blackmail. Of course, Peter Thiel's errand boy is now being vice president of the U.S., and many Thiel or Palantir adjacent figures make this not politically expedient to point out. So she's basically saying, like, it's not convenient and people like Ian don't want to talk about it, so they don't seem to talk about it. But as I have been writing about and screaming about, and in my investigation last month for The Last American Vagabond, I reported meet the Peter Thiel acolytes in the Trump second administration. And this is just a little bit of background on who Peter Thiel is. And then I go through one by one and showing all the people in Trump's current administration. There may be more that I haven't seen or that will come in later. But for now, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, David Sachs, Howard Lutnick, Jim O'Neill, Ken Howry, Jacob Helberg, Michael Kratsios, Vivek Ramaswamy, who's no longer in the administration, but still is in the orbit. And there's other people related to Thiel, including Alex Karp, his co-founder at Palantir, and also a Bilderberg steering committee member. And of course, they're major Zionists, and they're all backing the whole Israeli mission anyway. So Epstein is very much in the news, and I'm glad that Whitney corrected the record for Ian, and I hope Ian doesn't back out of our planned discussion for later this month, because I really do want to get into this stuff with him. But overall, what's important, as the title of today's show indicates, the Epstein network and the bosses above Epstein, the people who he was working for, are still running wild. They're still running the show. There hasn't been any real accountability. Jeffrey Epstein allegedly killed himself. Ghislaine Maxwell is locked up in a prison for the moment. And no, we're not screwed. We're not screwed at all, but we're not going to win through politicians. So that's the big thing. I hate when you guys just have this low level way of thinking, like, so we're screwed if politicians aren't saving us. No, how about maybe the answer is that politicians were never going to save us, and we need to recognize that we have to save ourselves. So it's not all is lost if just because politicians aren't going to help us. It's that we have to step up to the plate and claim our own power, claim our own sovereignty, and save ourselves. I know that's tough for a lot of people, or maybe it's too abstract, but here's an answer. Stop fucking believing in politicians. Stop thinking voting's going to save you. Stop thinking that you can get the easy way out. There's no easy way out. You're going to have to fix this world. You're going to have to take care of your family. You're going to have to survive and thrive in the face of a technocratic state, which is very rapidly emerging. Myself and Whitney and many others are trying to warn you to take steps as quick as possible, educate yourself, and get out of their systems. It's easier said than done, but it is possible. But no, we're not screwed just because a bunch of politicians are going to sell out again and prove themselves to be psychopathic child abusers. Now, one other aspect of this that people need to know more about is Jean-Luc Brunel, which again, if you go to the website and the Epstein network, you can see I reported on Jean-Luc Brunel, Epstein associate, found dead. Yep, allegedly he got arrested in France and then he killed himself too. And most people have never even heard his name, but that guy was part of the French connection. He was the one who was, here's my report on this. When did I do this? Forget Epstein, let's find Jean-Luc Brunel. Just talking about how, and I think this was even before he allegedly killed himself, how even after Epstein was alleged to have died, this is a piece of the puzzle that most people have never heard about. Jean-Luc Brunel, he ran the M2 modeling agency. It was his modeling agency that was also funneling young women to Jeffrey Epstein. He was arrested by the French authorities. He allegedly killed himself, and that's it. So the people who were sort of low-hanging fruit, like Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel, they were killed or taken out, or maybe some of you believe they're chilling on an island sipping martinis. Maybe they are. But the thing is that either way, the people they work for are the people who are still running around free. And that's something that's very difficult for people to contend with. I feel like it's not always easy to acknowledge that the bad guys got away. So let's go ahead, though, and talk a little bit more about Epstein before we move on to the next story. This is an ongoing court case that I think is probably the most likely chance that we're going to get new information relating to Jeffrey Epstein and to the whole network and any sort of details. And also, I want to preface this by saying, I've been saying to people for a while, it's not just about which famous celebrity or politician was involved in this or which one flew on the Lita Express. Like, yes, if there are people who are doing fucked up shit, let's hold them accountable. Let's bring it to the light. Let's expose it all. But it should be about the survivors. It should be about the women, the victims, the people who were abused, and focusing on accountability. I just feel like some people are still in this sort of like National Enquirer tabloid mode in the conspiracy culture, and they're just obsessed over what's the most gross, disturbing, messed up story I can possibly hear. And if it's not salacious, then people don't pay attention. And so I think it's exhausting. But anyways, this article is about a month old, but it was the lead up to this new trial for Jess Staley, ex-Barclays CEO, gears up for explosive trial over city regulators' allegations on Jeffrey Epstein ties. Let's explain this and then see what has happened, because this trial is actually going on right now. Court papers seen by The Guardian mean Jess Staley's appeal against the FCA ruling will demand answers on link to sex offender. former chief executive of Barclays, is gearing up for an explosive trial that will force him to address evidence suggesting that he hid the depth of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Court documents reveal myriad allegations by the Financial Conduct Authority, including that Epstein messaged Staley about sex, women, and foreign holidays while working behind the scenes to bolster his career by liaising with government officials, business leaders, and royalty. The documents also allege that Staley referred to Epstein as family and Uncle Jeffrey, and that the pair shared confidential information and used Staley's eldest daughter as an intermediary to stay in touch years after he was appointed chief executive of Barclays. So this is like related to financial crimes and laundering of money and just the power and the reach that Epstein had to keep certain people out of trouble and to get them their positions. And this is in the UK. The evidence will be heard during a high-profile 2-week hearing at the Upper Tribunal in London in early March. I believe it just started this week, in which Staley hopes to overturn a 2023 FCA ruling that has cost him his reputation and $18 million in pay and bonuses. He resigned as the chief executive in November 2021 after an investigation into whether he had failed to disclose the full extent of his ties with the sex offender when he joined the bank. In 2023, he was banned from holding any senior city role after the FCA ruled that he had misled the regulator over his relationship with Epstein. He issued a statement at the time saying, quote, "If I had known who Jeffrey Epstein really was, there was absolutely no doubt that I wouldn't be in the position I am today. Prior to undertaking my formal role, it was known that I had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein." So they're investigating this guy. They're investigating how much he knew about Epstein and if he lied. And here's some of the more recent reports. This is just March 5th. Jess Staley told staffer he didn't think Epstein was a pedophile. Jess Staley told a senior colleague that he would never have introduced his wife and daughters to Jeffrey Epstein if he had known that his former friend was a pedophile. His former chief of staff, Sasha Wiggins, gave evidence on her old boss on the third day of the courtroom showdown between the former Barclays chief and the Financial Conduct Authority. So this says the third day of the courtroom showdown, which was March 5th. So this was just 2 days ago. So that means it's still ongoing. They're expecting it to be 2 weeks. So that means it's this week and next week it'll be going on. So I encourage you to keep up with it. Let's continue on. There's another one here. Like I said, the details are just kind of coming out every day. Jeffrey Epstein used a lobbyist to push for Jess Staley to be Barclays CEO, the court is told. And this is really interesting because, again, this shows you not just the power of who Jeffrey Epstein was himself, but Jeffrey Epstein was just a nobody that was put in this position because of him being useful to intelligence agencies. And so they knew he was useful and they would help him achieve the goals that he wanted to. And I think that's really what we're seeing here is that Jeffrey Epstein was able to use lobbyists to get this guy to be the head of Barclays. Now, why would he want him to be in that position? He could be doing a personal favor. It could be to help them launder money through his institution, through Barclays. There's a number of different reasons, but now we're learning, as the court was just told on Tuesday, Jeffrey Epstein deployed a consultant to push for Jess Staley to become the CEO in 2012. With the ultimately failed campaign called Project Jess having planned to target high-profile leaders, including the then-Chancellor George Osborne and the Bank of England Governor Mervyn King. So they're claiming it failed. He was trying this in 2012, but this dude ended up being in the position later on, so I don't know if you can really say it failed. The campaign's efforts were detailed as part of the landmark legal case launched by Staley against the UK regulator, the FCA. So basically, he's been accused of things. He's had to pay lots of, lost bonuses and things like that. And he is now suing the UK regulator, trying to say that they have misrepresented the case and that they don't really understand his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Nevertheless, it seems like they did have a pretty extensive relationship. Evidence presented to the Upper Tribunal in London showed that Epstein began emailing a man named Ian Osborne in summer 2012 with a subject heading Project Jess, seemingly in an effort to promote Staley's prospects as becoming the chief executive of Barclays. He was searching for a replacement for Bob Diamond, who had been forced out by the LIBOR fixing scandal. One of the emails sent by Ian Osborne to Epstein claimed that he had access to the then Chancellor George Osborne, and hoped to influence top-level officials at the Bank of England. The email to Epstein said, quote, "Let me know how you want to proceed and I will get on it. Calls can happen anytime and I can see people back in London after Tuesday. Rupert and George are both very close to Mervyn King and top Bank of England staff. I'm seeing the Chancellor anyway next Thursday." So Epstein responded by email, passing judgment on the rival candidates for the position, talking about other people that they were considering, and he was kind of talking down on them. Again, though, it's just showing the level that Epstein was willing to go to try to help Jess Staley, which doesn't really help his case of saying that we're not that close, guys. You guys misunderstood the relationship. Here's another piece of the puzzle that was put out also on Wednesday. Barclays chair called delayed UK probe over Staley's Epstein friendship for months. Let's explain what the heck that means. Barclays chairman assured UK regulators that the bank's former chief Jess Staley had not enjoyed a close relationship with Epstein, causing them to delay an investigation by several months. Jonathan Davidson, the former head of supervision at the Financial Contact Authority, said that Chairman Nigel Higgins told him in a phone call in August 2019 that Staley and Epstein, quote, had no particular relationship. Davidson faced questions on the third day of the legal showdown between the regulator and Staley. So basically saying that the boss basically tried to say, no, there's no relationship. And what that did is delayed the investigation into it. So once they called him and he assured them there was no particular relationship, they sort of let it go for a little bit. The call took place shortly after the death of Epstein, who was a former client of Staley's at JP Morgan Chase & Co. Higgins, who was on a summer vacation at the time, told Davidson during the call that he had already spoken with Staley and had been reassured that the pair's connection was nothing more than that between a private banker and a major client. And so he says, Davidson said in a written filing, from my point of view, the matter was not controversial or worrying, as Barclays seemed fully satisfied of their position. He said that he didn't believe any escalation was required and there was no urgency. So given that the relationship was close and that the Barclays chairman seemed convinced it was not close, I would accept that. However, as I said, the evidence continues to pile up, showing that this guy had a pretty extensive relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And I think, although there might not be anything major, like I said, celebrities' names or anything coming out of this, I definitely think that this is the most likely opportunity to get new information relating to the Jeffrey Epstein network. So that is Jess Staley, Barclays in the UK. Highly encourage you guys to follow that. I might be doing some articles on it soon if there's anything super relevant to talk about. But that, I think, is where some of our attention should be focused on, is to still looking at these pieces of the puzzle. Like the title of today's show, the bosses are still running things. And that means Les Wexner of the Limited brand and the Mega Group. These people are still out there. There's very little information about the Mega Group and their organizational structure and their focus. We just know that they're a bunch of rich billionaire Jewish philanthropists who want to support Zionism, and that they were connected to Jeffrey Epstein. And there's a lot of other shady connections, and none of those people are going to be held accountable. If you think that you're going to get accountability from Donald Trump, I think you're just in denial about their obvious, completely documented and factual decades-long relationship. I know this is really hard for a lot of Trump supporters to hear, but they were friends for decades, over a decade, close to 2 decades, I believe, that they knew each other, and that Trump said that he knew Epstein like them young. So if you think this is the administration that's going to be delivering you the truth about Epstein, I think you're letting yourself be fooled. At the very least, we might get some more documents in phase 2 of whatever else is coming from Pan Bondi. But ultimately, I think that this is going to be a limited hangout. We're not going to see the real truth. And until those questions are really asked, like, we're not going to get to the bottom of it. So, kudos to Ian for going on Joe Rogan and actually mentioning Les Wexner and the Mega Group. I think that's the first time that's ever happened on such a big platform like that, besides some of the interviews that Whitney's done. Hopefully more people will continue to dig into this, and hopefully Les Wexner will have to answer for his crimes or his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, because he's only ever put out one little kind of partial apology and then just sort of allowed to retire back to Ohio, with a lot of shady things going in Ohio, by the way, which I'll be reporting on soon. A lot of big tech and intelligence moving that way. So I hope that we can get to the bottom for the sake of exposing this corruption, because otherwise we're just going to all grow old and know that, yeah, there was a pedophile network involving a billionaire and a bunch of politicians. And for a moment, there was a glimmer of hope and a little bit of truth that came out. And then the next thing you know, it was just a joke on Saturday Night Live, and everybody hashtag Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, but nothing ever happened. And that would be a sad state of affairs, my friend, if that's where it ends up. So let's go ahead and take a quick break. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about DOGE and efficiency. And is efficiency the gateway to technocracy? Stay tuned and we'll find out.
Are you using your phone, or is it using you? Rise above mass surveillance and discover a phone that protects your privacy and communications.
Above Phone does everything your old phone does, without tracking you, while giving you complete control over your phone and apps. We are better than big tech. It works with any cell service. No forced logins. No advertising or tracking. Download apps privately. Control your phone and its apps with secure hardware. Introducing Above Suite. Protects your internet traffic. Private email on any device. Video call with friends privately. Encrypted chat, calls, and internet phone. Protect your searches and get results. Don't worry if you're new. Every phone includes a free 45-minute live call. You also get free email and chat support, free guides, and video courses. We can take back our technology. We're here to help with tools and education. You have the power.
Rise above with Above Phone.
AbovePhone.com.
All right, welcome back to the Conscious Resistance Live. That was the Above Phone, AbovePhone.com. That is not the Eric Prince unplugged phone that Ian Carroll mentioned or that some people promote. Do not use anything associated with Eric Prince and Blackwater and these private military contractors. But if you do want to support my work and you want to actually use a de-Googled phone that's loaded with privacy apps, open source apps, you can go ahead and do so at AbovePhone.com. And I'll show this on the screen real quick. If you want to support me, you can go to AbovePhone.com. And that link right there, $above equals TCR. And you can use code DBROZE50 to get a discount on that. Highly encourage you guys to do that. Now let's read a couple more comments before we go on to our next story. We're going to talk about the efficiency efforts at DOGE and if this is really something we should embrace. A couple minutes ago, I was responding to Steve Smith, who said, so I guess we're all fucked. And I was telling Steve, actually, I don't think we're screwed, man. It's just that we can't trust politicians. Steve said, I appreciate the positivity, but I mean in the sense that the majority don't and won't get the big picture. You're probably right. I have no faith, no qualms or expectations that the majority, in the sense of like the 99%, the vast majority of people are going to quote unquote wake up, and not even wake up, but get active and actually do something about it. That's not really what I'm working towards. I've sort of given up on that idea. What I'm focused on, there's two components to my efforts here. Yes, one part is to try to reach new people, to not preach to the choir. That's why I go do public speaking. I travel the world, I do events, and I try to put out content and do any interview, any podcast I can pretty much to reach people and to continue growing this message. At the same time, I'm also trying to activate those people who consider themselves awake or aware. Because as I've said in the last year, it's not enough to be awake. If you're awake and you got all the books and you watched all the documentaries and read all the books, but then you're not doing shit about it, then are you really awake? I mean, what's the point of being awake if you don't actually do something? So I've been speaking more about being activated, action-oriented, forward-thinking. So part of my goal is to reach new people, wake up the normies, so to speak. The other part is to say, hey, if you think you're awake, then get something done. Start being active, especially if you can see all the crazy technocratic shit on the horizon and you're not doing anything about it. You're selling out your ancestors. You're selling out the coming generations by choosing to know and not act. I won't accept that. So I'm trying to light a fire under the asses of anybody who will pay attention and say, perhaps you should start focusing on growing your own food. Perhaps you should stop trusting politicians. Perhaps you should start thinking about getting off big tech. Perhaps you should start getting organized on a local level with other like-minded people. That's what I'm trying to focus on. I'm not really worried about trying to wake up the masses. I don't think they necessarily will wake up. And at the end of the day, freedom has to come from within somebody's heart and mind. We can't force freedom on people. So if people want to go live in the technocratic state, that's their choice. That's their option. The only thing I think we ultimately can do is to lead by example and to try to show other people what a free, powerful, beautiful human being looks like and what that person looks like as we're pursuing building a better world. So yeah, and then as we put here, pray for the best, prepare for the worst, expect to be surprised. Yeah, that's basically another way to put it. Let's go ahead and dive into our next story. Lots of people are celebrating and have been celebrating the work of DOGE and Elon Musk exposing certain things in US aid. And sure, there's some positive elements of this, but what people really need to understand is that the technocratic philosophy, which Elon Musk absolutely believes in, and which his grandfather, Joshua Hadelman, was a part of in Canada, is about removing the business class. And some people might celebrate that, like the anti-capitalists. They're like, yeah, we're getting rid of the bad capitalists. Let's abolish them. But the technocrats also want to get rid of the voting rights, the democracy, the people power, whatever you think about democracy, and I have my issues with it. They want to get rid of the ability to have the people, let the people have a voice, and the ability for the business class to have a voice. So you get rid of those things, and then you put instead the technocracy, which is ruled by the technological and scientific elite, using the tools, using the machines, using the AI, as we would call it now, to micromanage society. And they have this whole bureaucracy in mind. So technocracy is not about getting rid of bureaucracy in any way. In fact, it's just a completely different form of bureaucracy. And they're going to have the continental director or the technate king at the top of these technates. The technate is what they call they're basically like a continent, but in their vision, that would be called a technate. So for example, in the 1930s, the Technocracy Inc. and the technocratic movement of that time, they were calling for the technate of North America. And the technate of North America, as I've previously reported, included Canada, the United States, Mexico, Panama, and Greenland, as well as some other areas. But basically the North American Union, you know, that you guys were all concerned about years ago, but now a lot of people are embracing because Trump's talking about it. We're going to talk more about Panama in a few minutes and BlackRock. But my point here is that the technocratic movement, it actually is about making things more efficient. At least that's what they call for. Now, that doesn't mean that every single person who talks about efficiency is a technocrat, but I think that is what people are being sold. People are being fooled to think that we're going to get some sort of libertarian, anarchist paradise or conservative paradise where we remove the glut of government and shrink it down to a size that we can all get behind, and it becomes more efficient, and it's the golden age of America, and we serve the world and everything's great. I don't think that's what's happening. What I think is happening is they're selling you a more efficient government, a more small government, but at the same time, they're going to strip the government of any potential devices or defense mechanisms against the billionaire corporate technocratic class, and then replace it with AI-run government with technocracy. And the reason I think this also matters is because and I'm going to be talking about this in some coming reports here, but if you understand that technocracy didn't just appear out of nowhere, as one of my listeners on YouTube is always going on about. It's part of the progressive movement. It was part of the progressive movement of the time as people were trying to understand how they could fix the economy during the Great Depression and afterwards. There was a lot of different ideas being proposed, and one of them was technocracy. But there's also movements like Taylorism. There's another one that came before it called the efficiency movement, which the Rockefellers were advocates for, as well as Andrew Carnegie. And this is about making government and things more efficient. And so the efficiency sort of played into the technocratic ideal. That is what's been in the back of my mind the entire time I'm hearing all this stuff about DOGE and making government more efficient. I don't think it's, like I said a couple minutes ago, I don't think it's in the interest of making the government better serving for the people. That's what they're selling it as. But in reality, it's going to be about stripping the government of any sort of tools. Like, again, I'm an anarchist, I'm a voluntarist. I'm not here defending the government, but there are probably some tools in place that are at least a hindrance to certain people in power. And what Elon is trying to do with his DOGE movement is to take all those pieces of the puzzle out of the equation so that they can basically make it be a government that is dependent on billionaires. And if you've been paying attention to any of the reporting, and some of it's coming out of the mainstream, so I know a lot of you guys don't bother reading it, but I think it's important to get a well-rounded perspective. You have heard that in the last couple of days, just this week as I'm reporting this, there have been some conflicts in the Trump White House between Marco Rubio, between Elon Musk, and between other department heads who Elon is basically barking orders at and saying, you're not firing people quick enough. You're not getting rid of people. If I need to take over, I will. And Trump had to apparently kind of step in and say, Elon, they even put out a press release about this, and Trump tweeted on posted on social media saying, we're going to take a scalpel now instead of a hatchet, which many people, including myself, are interpreting as saying, okay, at first they were going really fast and we're letting Elon run the show. Now some of the department heads are saying, like, even them are saying, like, okay, is Elon running the show or is Trump running the show? And there's a little internal drama. Maybe it doesn't matter in the end, but it's important to understand that there are going to be conflicts, as even some of the conservatives and the Zionists and the people that we don't agree with, they might eventually wake up and realize that what they thought Elon was about was actually not the truth, and that now they're being sold down a river as well. Because that's the thing, is even people in power who have screwed over the average person, they're not going to be given a seat at the table either. They might think they are, but at the end of the day, they're just low-level management people, and they're expendable in the eyes of the technocratic predator class. Now, I saw this report from the New York Times. It's about a week old. The people carrying out Musk's plans at DOGE. And I want to look more into this. Like I said, I haven't had time to look into every person here, but it's interesting. It said the New York Times has identified 45 people within the so-called Department of Government Efficiency. Few members have formal Washington experience. Many are software engineers, and all seem to have a clear mandate: shrink and disrupt the federal government. So they go through here to describe some of the different names and people. Again, I think this is an important article here for those of us who want to do the deep dives to start looking into it. And some of them are super young, just like coders who love Elon and will basically do anything he wants, and they were invited into the fold. I've read articles of them talking about some of the people making the decisions are like 25 years old to fire certain people. It says DOGE staffers have background in engineering, law, finance, human resources, and real estate. And some of them don't even have, current pictures that we are out in the public. There's also allies of Musk who have helped carry out the team's work. Again, we need to look into each of these people. I know a few of the names, but I definitely don't know all of them. And then they've even got it set up where you can sort of look at filter by agency involvement, filter by involvement with Musk's past companies. And so he's, of course, pulling from his own companies and his own leadership, which I guess is a smart move. Some people might say, well, he's pulling in people who he can trust. But that doesn't mean these people are people that we can trust. These are other technocrats, or at least people who are loyal to Elon Musk. And some of them have short profiles here. Again, all these will be posted in the show notes. I just wanted to mention this, that Elon's not even really the one taking the steps and making it happen. Here's another article from Vanity Fair last week as well. This woman, who is not Elon Musk, is definitely 100% running DOGE. Her name is Amy Gleason, and they showed her over here on this one. Right there, Amy Gleason. Let's go back down to her profile real quick. Amy Gleason. During the first Trump administration, she worked at the United States Digital Service, which was what Trump's executive order turned the digital service into DOGE. She later worked with Brad Smith at an investment firm focused on health companies, and she rejoined USDS late last year. She was named the administrator of DOGE on Tuesday. That's the woman they're talking about. That's what this article is about. And they do a deep dive on her, adding to the confusion and uproar around the controversial cost-cutting department. This is the woman who's really in control. And they talk about some of her history and stuff like that. I think more and more people need to be skeptical of this man, this dark MAGA, dark Gothic MAGA guy here. And not just because it's dark and some of you are scared of the color black. Black is my favorite color and I love it. So it's not satanic or anything like that. But this guy is literally going around wearing clothes and posting Novus Ordo Seclorum. The Republican Party at their convention had Novus Ordo Seclorum, which is the new order of the ages. Many of us have always interpreted that as the New World Order. But I guess if Trump's doing it, it's not the New World Order anymore. And Elon and his team, again, are trying to sell you down this river of efficiency, smaller government, better for the people, etc. But that's not what's on the plate, my friends. I wish it was, but unfortunately, that's not what's available to us right now. The billionaires are all lining up behind Trump. And the interesting thing is Elon, since he's not an American citizen, he can't be president. So this is as close to as the most richest man in the world can get to being in power. And also, you've noticed that Trump is now starting to speak about South Africa and some of the things going on there. Well, Elon Musk, David Sachs, and some of the other technocrats surrounding Trump are all from South Africa. So he's clearly taking a line of thinking from them. And I think this is it's a dangerous place to be, my friend. So I really want to help you guys and understand better what is happening here. And that's DOGE. I don't think DOGE is going to lead to freedom. I think DOGE and this talk of efficiency is going to lead to technocracy. And I hope more and more of you will see it, guys. We're going to take another quick break and come back and talk RFK, measles, and what the heck is going on there. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. So I've recently partnered with my friend Sean Hawkins of the company Cultivated Mind. He focuses on organic mushroom extracts, which are designed to help you physically, mentally, and maybe even more than that. I've just been testing them out recently. You may have seen my interview with Sean discussing this. We went over some of the specific benefits of the various types of mushrooms that Sean uses. I think it's a really exciting product to be a part of because not only are they organic, they're non-GMO, but if you know anything about mushrooms, as more and more of us have been learning about the benefits of mushrooms, not just psychedelic mushrooms, but all types of mushrooms, then you understand that they are a great boon to your health. So Sean recently hooked me up and I've been trying the Brain Squared, which is for gut pea flower extract, ashwagandha. I also recently picked up the Radiant Energy, which is for pre and post workout. So I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week and now starting to take these before and after. These feature cordyceps, reishi, and chaga. And finally, he's got Immune Renew, which is obviously for immunity. This one features chaga, turkey tail, reishi, maitake, shiitake, and extract of nattokinase. I encourage you to go visit the website. It is cultivated-mind.com. And of course, we have a special deal and a discount for those of you who want to purchase them through my link at cultivated-mind.com/cm/broze, BROZE. You can check out the link on the screen right now, or wherever you're watching, check out the link below the video. All right, welcome back to the Conscious Resistance Live. I'm going to now segue. We're going to talk about RFK. We're going to talk about some of this measles discussion and many ways that I think RFK is selling out here. And I know that so many of you out there don't want to hear it. I've seen just as much pushback by calling out RFK as I have about Trump. People telling me, I just don't understand how politics works, and he has to lie to get into the office, and he can't come out and say the truth or he'll be attacked by the normies, and that's not going to help anything. So he has to play the game and sort of kind of promote measles, but then also throw a bone and talk about vitamin A and things like that. It's all making me nauseous hearing these people make freaking excuses for everybody. But let's go ahead and get into this. First thing I will mention, and I haven't seen many people talk about it, but this is one thing that I think we probably would all support, is this discussion around banning Moderna's bird flu vaccines. And that's something I think we can all support. Trump team weighs pooling funding for Moderna bird flu vaccine. The U.S. health officials are evaluating a $590 million contract for bird flu shots that the Biden administration awarded to Moderna Inc. People familiar with the matter said. The review is part of a government push to examine spending on mRNA vaccines, quote unquote vaccines, the technology that powered Moderna's COVID shot. The bird flu shot contract was awarded to Moderna in the final days of the Biden administration. And now Trump is allegedly considering to reverse that. That would be a positive thing, and I hope that does happen. But at the moment, we're going to have to wait and see. So keep your eye on that one. And now to the topic of measles. Well, actually, I had that one from before. We'll save that for later. Here's RFK's op-ed. Now, let's start off this. He wrote the op-ed. For people who are too dumb to realize this, when I share this, people are like, I don't see anything about Robert F. Kennedy. And I guess they don't know how to look up an author here and see by Robert F. Kennedy. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he chose this title or this subheading. The title is Measles Outbreak is a Call to Action for All of Us. That kind of sounds like the general message of what he's saying. Then you have this subheading that says MMR vaccine is crucial to avoiding potentially deadly disease. We don't know if he chose those headlines or subheadings, so not necessarily going to judge him on that, but let's look at what he actually said. He said, quote, I am deeply concerned about the recent measles outbreak. So that alone to me is problematic, because that is acknowledging or claiming that there is an alleged outbreak, which I don't think we can just blindly trust the CDC or any health officials in Texas or the media when they're saying there's some outbreak. They think we're being told there's the first death that has taken place. And Kennedy is playing into this. Now, for those who don't know, RFK has been one of the most vocal people, not the only person, of course, but one of the many vocal people speaking out about the concerns around the MMR vaccine, connections to autism, various other injuries and dangers. And he talks often about how these mothers came to see him and, told him about their situation. And then later, he started to look into it. So he spent years now talking about this and definitely explaining to people how measles isn't some great concern. In fact, it's interesting because the corporate media attacks Kennedy and says that he started a little outbreak in American Samoa when he went and visited there a few years ago and gave some speeches about the injections and stuff like that. So he's been attacked and accused of spreading measles by speaking against the MMR shots. And then here he says, I am deeply concerned about this outbreak. This situation has escalated rapidly, with the Texas Department of State Health Services reporting 146 cases since late January 2025, primarily in the South Plains region. And again, he just sort of shovels the mainstream talking point, says this outbreak has claimed the life of a school-age girl, the first measles-related fatality in the U.S. over a decade. Did he really look into that as rigorously as he might have done in the past, or did he just accept that that's what is going on? Because I don't know if we can just take that at face value. And here he goes again. Measles is a highly contagious respiratory illness with certain health risks, especially to unvaccinated individuals. Like that, I mean, that line alone which again, maybe got added afterwards. Maybe he didn't, write that in there, but I don't think he would just approve of them publishing and adding little lines like that. That directly contradicts the things that he's said over the years, that for one, the vaccine is a danger and that measles isn't some huge danger that people need to worry about. He goes on to talking about, most cases are mild, but the rare complications can be serious. Prior to the vaccine in 1960s, virtually every child contracted measles. The current Texas outbreak has affected predominantly children. And so there's some good things, like people say a case fatality rate of 1 in every 1,200, which is high or low, depending on your depending on your view. And he goes on here, he says, I have directed the CDC to work closely with Texas health authorities. HHS efforts include offering technical assistance, laboratory support, vaccines. Yes, vaccines. The CDC is in continuous communication with Texas health officials. I have spoken with Governor Greg Abbott and Texas health officials committed to providing them any additional support they need to bring this outbreak to an end. And it's funny because Greg Abbott, Texas governor, where I'm originally from, was at some point pretending to kind of play this, anti-vaccine, or not necessarily anti-vaccine, but he was definitely questioning COVID and things like that. Now, when it comes to, well, Trump's back in office and RFK is there, so I guess we're all just going to buy the narrative. And he says, we have a shared responsibility to protect public health. This includes ensuring accurate information about vaccine safety and efficacy is disseminated. We must engage with communities to understand their concerns and make vaccines readily available for all those who want them. So again, what I was told by people is like, Derrick, what you don't understand is he can't just go hard. So he has to let the normies get their vaccines. I'm not even saying he should be calling for banning them. I'm just saying he should keep the stance he's had for almost 2 decades now and say, there are concerns about these shots. We need to study them further. This is not a major concern. Let's not rush to go get a vaccine and not send vaccines to Texas and say like, this is a major health emergency and then play into the narrative that somebody has died related to it, whether you know that or not. He also talks about therapeutics. So this is where his supporters say, but Derrick, he mentioned therapeutics. They upgraded the recommendation supporting a vitamin A under the supervision of a physician. And studies have found that vitamin A can reduce measles mortality. That's good information. I'm not saying that shouldn't be in there, but that's all that should be in there. It shouldn't be this other sort of playing the freaking line about MMR vaccines. He says parents play a pivotal role in safeguarding their children's health. They should consult with their healthcare providers to understand their options to get the MMR vaccine. The decision to vaccinate is a personal one. It says vaccines not only protect individual children, but also contribute to community immunity, protecting those who are vulnerable, unable to be vaccinated. So okay, I get that there's one line that he says the decision to vaccinate is a personal one. That's it. He didn't say no one should be forced to be vaccinated. And then he kind of squeezes that in between. Vaccines not only protect individuals from measles, but contribute to community immunity and help people who can't be vaccinated. I mean, he's just pretty much promoting the same old line. Now, deeper into it, he does say tens of thousands of people died with measles in 19th century America. By 1960, and he does make a note, before the vaccine's introduction, improvements in sanitation and nutrition had eliminated 98% of measles deaths. That's great. Again, that should be the focus, not even just mentioning of the vaccine and it protects people and this and that. Oh, by the way, we got rid of it before the vaccines came along, but I'm still going to promote it. It's like forked tongue. He's trying to play it all ways and still sort of keep his Maha base, but at the same time is shoveling shit down your throats. And unfortunately, Del Bigtree and others are in the Tyler Bollinger at the Truth About Cancer, and some of the whole MAGA Maha crowd are just making up excuses for RFK, as expected. I mean, I'm not surprised by it. I did see one good take on this, or a reasonable take, from Michael Caine, who's from the organization Teachers for Choice. He says, my 8 questions to Secretary Kennedy regarding Texas child alleged to have died of measles. And he goes through and he says, was the child unvaccinated for measles? Was the child given an MMR vaccine in the hospital while running a fever? Was the child originally admitted to the hospital with an RSV infection, which has been widely claimed on social media? Is it true the child who died did not exhibit physical symptoms of measles, but was given a PCR test that tested positive for measles? If PCR was the only diagnostic confirming measles, what was the cycle rate of the positive PCR test? We talk about that, how the cycle rates can create false positives during COVID. Did this child have any other ailments or health conditions that would make him or her more susceptible to an infectious illness? Was this child suffering from any chronic health condition? Was measles the only cause of death? Some good questions there. As far as I know, none of these are going to be addressed, and none of them have been addressed. Now, the next portion of this discussion, I want to focus on some claims and some articles I've been reading recently that I think are concerning. Now, I don't think all of you are going to agree on my take here, but I do think they're concerning because it hints at the fact that RFK might have made some deals with Big Pharma, particularly with Pfizer and others, and that Trump definitely was meeting with Big Pharma and Pfizer, and that they gave him millions of dollars. Now, of course, the response I get from the Trump supporters is, well, of course, Derrick, it's their job to meet with them. They're the regulators. And I get that. I guess if I was in that position of power, I would meet with them. And I would meet with them and say, we're about to clean house. We're about to get rid of you guys. We're about to expose all the lies you've been telling. But instead, they got together. They had a fancy dinner. They gave Trump millions of dollars, they being Big Pharma executives, as we're going to talk about in a moment. And according to at least one of them, he's saying that RFK has, quote unquote, tempered his views and that he's not going to be as extreme as people might believe. But let's go ahead and just look at a couple of these stories here now. This was sort of the beginning of it at the White House. You guys might remember this from a couple weeks ago. The crowd booed as Trump introduced the head of Pfizer. And this was for Black History Month. It was a really weird moment, like all of Trump's thing, because he just can't fucking focus. He's just got ADD or just retarded or something. And so he's honoring a bunch of, Black folks for Black History Month. And then out of nowhere, he starts focusing on the business execs that he can't help but kiss their ass. He says, we also have the head of Pfizer here, one of the great business men of the America. And some people started booing, and apparently Trump giggled. There's videos of this. He was pointing to Albert Bourla, who's the Greek-American veterinarian who joined Pfizer in 1993 and has had several executive roles. He's now the chairman and the CEO of the company. This is a picture of him there. And so that created some concern. And people like me were saying, guys, why is Trump calling the head of Pfizer a great businessman after everything we just witnessed during COVID? Probably because he still says Operation Warp Speed is, is a great success. And oh yeah, by the way, RFK also said that during his confirmation hearing, he said that he supports the childhood schedule, and he said that Operation Warp Speed was a great success and an extraordinary achievement. And again, I got told, Derrick, you're just being black-pilled. He just has to say that so he can get into office. After that, he's really going to go hard and he's going to call out all the nonsense, and maybe he will. I mean, I'm not seeing all of it right now, but I'm hopeful, right? I mean, we'll see what happens. Nevertheless, let's check these articles out. This is from Yahoo Finance. And again, I know some people are like, Yahoo, what? That's not a source. Well, this is a journalist, a senior reporter. This was reported at the beginning of February. Not a lot of people saw it. This is right as RFK is being cleared by the Senate. It says he was cleared by the Senate today. Should Big Pharma be worried? Analysts believe it bodes poorly for vaccine makers. But Pfizer's CEO, Albert Bourla, said he doesn't think so in an interview with Yahoo Finance. He said that RFK's views on vaccines are not as radical as publicly perceived. He isn't the only one to have closed-door meetings with RFK and left with the same conclusion. Bourla of Pfizer said that he met with Kennedy and Trump in Mar-a-Lago prior to Trump taking office. He said Trump brought up the topic of vaccines. And according to the head of Pfizer, he told Yahoo Finance, quote, Mr. Kennedy had very modest views, so he tempered his views on vaccines, at least in our discussions, very much. If he will do things to try to undermine the capability of vaccines, I think the medical community will all oppose him. So just, kind of dropping that point that he's tempering his views. Now, maybe you don't want to trust the head of Pfizer. That's fine. Let's continue on looking at it. This is coming from Axios in early December. Trump, RFK Jr. dined with Pfizer and Eli Lilly and Pharma executives. President-elect Trump, this is before he was in office, hosted the chief executives of Pfizer, Eli Lilly, and Pharma Wednesday night at Mar-a-Lago, where they discussed how the public and private sectors can collaborate on finding cures for cancer, among other topics. Of course, this is before Trump gets into office and announces the Stargate mRNA AI cancer shots with the head of Oracle and the head of OpenAI. Now, the patio dinner, it says, is a potential indication that Trump's administration will see the pharmaceutical industry as a partner, not just an adversary, for parts of its Make America Healthy Again agenda. There's been speculation about how Trump's team will deal with the industry, given Trump and RFK's tough talk. However, Albert Bourla of Pfizer, Lilly CEO David Ricks were at the dinner. Steve Ubel, CEO of Pharma, which is Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, represented the industry at the table. And Susie Wiles, who many of you have learned about and is not somebody to be trusted, Trump's chief of staff, was also in the room. And so it says that, they talk about Operation Warp Speed and how Trump worked with them. The meeting at Mar-a-Lago included a pre-dinner reception that lasted nearly 3 hours. And yeah, so they're working on this idea of curing cancer. Of course, as we know, now they're doing the mRNA shots that Trump seems to be embracing. Although, as I showed a couple minutes ago, there's talk that the Trump administration might be talking about banning the mRNA bird flu vaccine. So we're getting mixed messages. We'll see. This other one, newly stacked Pharma to meet with Trump on IRA and other policies. This was also in late February. So this is while Trump was in office. The meeting, which will include Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla as the newly named board of directors chair, will reportedly cover key topics for the lobbying group, including the Inflation Reduction Act. Leaders from the Pharma will meet with President Trump on Thursday, and the drug industry's largest lobbying group stacked the deck prior to the event. The purported fireside chat is an effort to work with the returning president on policies affecting drug makers, according to Bloomberg. And Pharma is hoping to undo some of the policies put in place during the Biden era. And in 2025 policy document, Pharma pushed back on Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. So Big Pharma is hoping that Trump's going to help them get some financial benefits and take away some things from Biden. So there might be a potential allyship brewing there. Now let's look at another one. This is February as well. Inside Trump's $1 million dinners with healthcare executives, Donald Trump hosted meals with dozens of the corporate leaders during the presidential transition in a lucrative money-making venture. First came the pharmaceutical executives, then the insurance companies and the hospital leaders. During 2 months that shattered records for presidential transitions, healthcare executives wrote among the largest checks, paying millions of dollars to attend at least 6 dinners with now President Trump before he took office. In his gold-covered chandelier dining room just off the lobby of Mar-a-Lago Club, Trump discovered one of the most lucrative money-making ventures of his career, sometimes serving chopped steak, sometimes showing off his iPad playlist, and listening to executives looking to bend his ear and complain about others. Altogether, Trump has told associates he raised about $500 million from Big Pharma before he came back into office, much of it from the healthcare industry. And again, they've also been meeting with RFK. The money, which Trump has told others he would use as a rainy day fund, was split among Trump's inaugural committee and various other accounts, including a large political action committee. The committee itself raised more than $200 million. So just more of this example of how Trump has been having dinners and fundraisers and getting lots of money from Big Pharma right before he came in office. And then now the head of Pfizer is saying that RFK may have tempered his views and is not as crazy as we might have thought. And in fact, in February, Albert Bourla, Pfizer CEO, said that the opportunities with Trump clearly outweigh the risks. And he basically said that he thinks that, they're not going to be as extreme as people have taught, people think they might be. He said, I truly believe the opportunities clearly outweigh the risk because this administration, to start with, they believe that strong business, strong private sector, strong entrepreneurship makes America great. And that was not the case with the previous administration. So they're saying, hey, he's going to see us as businessmen. And by the way, here's a picture of Albert Bourla, Pfizer at World Economic Forum. A little bit more here. We got this one from Semaphore, Pfizer's Albert Bourla on Trump 2.0. And this is January 24th. And he said, as far as RFK goes, he said, quote, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to work with him on developing a new Operation Warp Speed for cancer. Now, that's just a statement. It could just be him talking out his ass, but it could also be that he has discussed this with Trump or RFK in some way, that they have discussed Operation Warp Speed for cancer vaccines. And as we know, we now have the whole Stargate project, and it's being discussed openly. I mean, there's conversation around this about using AI and mRNA technology to fight against cancer. Now, so far, we haven't heard Pfizer's involvement in that, but it wouldn't be a huge surprise if we learned about it. And I think that is probably on the horizon. And one last little look here, just to kind of put it into context. This week, Houston area officials push for measles vaccination amid West Texas outbreak. As the outbreak in West Texas reaches 159 confirmed cases Tuesday, Harris County officials, Judge Lena Hidalgo, and Houston Mayor John Whitmire both encouraged residents to get the measles vaccine. So propaganda is out in full swing. And I know some people say, yeah, but see, RFK, like I already went through, he's talking about vitamin A and he said it's a personal choice, but he's still playing into the narrative that this is some kind of major dangerous thing that we all need to be concerned about. And let me show you a report I did years ago, reminding people that, TV shows like The Brady Bunch, used to talk about measles, and these things are kind of banned these days, and you don't really see these stories on TV anymore or movies. Instead, it's all about fear and like, oh, measles is going to kill your children and everything. But I have this report that I did from 2019. Does the Brady Bunch have something to teach about measles? You can also find this at theconsciousresistance.com or under our vaccine section. Just kind of going over this because this was one of the last times we saw the measles scare right before COVID. It was in 2019, and they were even blaming RFK and saying that he was part of that. Like I said, this American Samoa measles outbreak, they were saying he was responsible. And that was some of the beginning of this conversation, talking about how we needed mandatory vaccinations and how people needed to be restricted, their movement or even their rights taken away if they wouldn't get a measles shot MMR vaccine because they were causing these outbreaks. And it's those crazy loony granola moms on Pinterest who are becoming anti-vaxxers. And then of course that played right into COVID 1984. And before you know it, mandatory vaccinations, vaccine mandates were all the rage. Now, one last story on this section that I will play before we play a clip from RFK, just to kind of even things out. And so people know I am being objective. Today, Reuters reported that the US CDC is planning to study vaccines and autism. This is, of course, sources say at the moment. So this hasn't been an official statement made by the CDC, made by RFK or anybody. But the headline says the US CDC is planning a large study into potential connections between vaccines and autism. Two sources familiar with the matter told Reuters. There's no evidence or clarity on whether or not RFK is going to be involved in it or how the CDC study will be carried out. And no comment was offered by CDC or the Department of Health and Human Services. Nevertheless, if this does turn out to be true, that would be a big step, and I would support that. I know there's many people, though, who are concerned that this is going to be another limited hangout, and I get it, guys. It's so hard to trust anything, that it's going to be a limited hangout, and then they're going to RFK and Del Bigtree and Trump, and they'll study and they'll say, look, guys, we fixed it. We're going to make safer vaccines, which is what that whole crowd has always called for. If you really paid attention closely, they weren't anti-vaxxers, which is fine. You don't necessarily need to be an anti-vaxxer, I think, to hang out and kick it. But we all know that the childhood schedule and the vaccines themselves are the problem. If you guys haven't read this book, Dissolving Illusions, let me show this a little bigger on screen real quick. Dissolving Illusions. See if you can read that. It's backwards. But Disease, Vaccines, and the Forgotten History by Suzanne Humphreys and Roman Bystrionic. I encourage you guys to pick this one up and dive deeper into this whole study. It's not that we're going to get safer vaccines. It's that the vaccines have been poisoned. And, I've become more comfortable and more assured about saying that, where I might have been afraid to say that in the past, but I think it's becoming more obvious. So last thing I want to mention before we move on to our next story, we're going to play a quick clip. Don't just trust me, guys. Here's RFK in his own words. So those of you who may have thought, oh, maybe he's selling out or he's trying to play games, and I'm sure you're going to say the same thing, but here's RFK in his own words during the confirmation hearing. As I said to you already, he has said he supports the childhood schedule. He said Operation Warp Speed was a great success. And here he is during his confirmation hearing, basically saying that he's not going to go after the measles vaccine. He thinks it's fine. He thinks it's great. And why should anybody be surprised then after he gets in office and is now putting out an op-ed promoting measles as if it's the next big scare? I don't know, guys. Maybe I'm just black-pilled. Maybe I'm just negative. Or maybe you're just sucking on hopium and you don't want to accept that you've been fooled again. Check out this clip.
I support the measles vaccine. I support the polio vaccine. I will do nothing as HHS Secretary that makes it difficult or discourages people from taking either of those
Anybody
vaccines.
who
Fortunately, there is clear data showing that the HPV vaccine has saved lives and cut cervical cancer rates dramatically. If confirmed as HHS Secretary, would you recommend that parents get their children vaccinated against HPV?
I recommend that children follow the CDC schedule. And I will support the CDC schedule when I get in there, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed.
Would you recommend that parents get their children vaccinated against the measles? Yes or no?
Against measles? Yes. And I'll just say about Operation Warp Speed, it was an extraordinary accomplishment, showed demonstration of leadership by President Trump.
All right. So there he is in his own words. He said extraordinary leadership from President Trump, Operation Warp Speed. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you guys. Like, look, keep looking for positive things where they are. Maybe they're going to speak out about fluoride. Maybe they are going to look into autism and MMR and stuff like that. But at the same time, I just think that it's a really unwise strategy to just keep hoping that these people are going to lead you to freedom, lead you to liberty. I've talked about this many times, my friends, that we have to create liberty in our own lives. We have to come to those own conclusions for ourselves. We can't rely on these people to free us. And I know that's harder said than done, because some people are like, Derrick, I'm broke, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. I get it. I get it. This is a full-time job for me, and I'm trying to learn how to take care of myself. I make less than $30,000 a year. Okay, guys, this is not a well-paying job. I'm not one of these wealthy journalist influencers out there. I aspire to wealth. I'm not against wealth or against money, and I'm manifesting abundance now. But just to be real, I have always been a poor dude in my adult life. My family's not wealthy. I don't have a trust fund, but I've been able to get to a position of buying land with other like-minded people because I knew I couldn't do it on my own. So I had to start looking places that I could afford to buy land. And Mexico is a place I love. Mexico is a place I can afford to live in regularly. And also as a felon, it's very difficult to live my life in the United States anymore. So I found a place that seemed like home for me. I started working with other like-minded people. It's been 5 years, guys, now that we've paid off the land. Finally, we've got new members coming in. It's still a process. We haven't even built our homes yet. This is going to be the rest of my life, but I'm putting every single thing I got into it because I can see the technocratic state coming. And maybe I will have children someday in the future. And I'm definitely not going to let them be born into a world where there's no option B or C or D for them and just say, sorry, guys, we knew the technocratic state was coming, but we chose to do nothing about it. So now you have to own nothing and be happy about it. Here's your digital ID. Here's your brain chip. Let's go to the smart city. Let's get everything drone delivered to our house and driverless vehicles. We own nothing. Life is amazing. I'm not going to bring a human being into this world if that's the case. And so I'm working night and day to try to create a reality that is in line with my values, my principles, to try to be a living example for you and anybody who gives a shit, as a person who is not just going to comply, who's not just going to take the easy way out, who's not going to give up on principles and compromise, which so many of you out there do. I'm not better than you. This is not a competition, but God, I was so fucking naive when I first woke up, thinking that people actually cared about principles, thinking that, wow, I found other people who care about truth and we're all actually going to do something about it. Instead, it's just turned into a freaking internet movement, conspiratainment, infotainment. Most of you just consume content and sit on your asses and do nothing about it. Or you try to squeeze it in between your busy day jobs. And I get that, but that's not going to fix things. You need to use your extra time and learn new skills, learn about permaculture, start building local community, find like-minded people, get off big tech, unplug from the banking system, try to avoid taxes, all the different things that I talk about in Exit and Build and in my book and in my speeches that I give out freely to all of you. Not because I think I have all the solutions, but I definitely know that some of them work. If you put the time and the energy into it, some of them will work, but it's not just going to be handed to you. And it's not going to come from trusting Donald Trump or RFK or any of these people. We have to work at it. We have to claim our own liberty. We have to claim our own freedom. It's not easy, but you're fooling yourself if you think pressing a button and voting for somebody is going to fix things, or just thumbs up on a podcast or sharing a video. Yes, sharing content can help, but that's just a piece of the puzzle. Like I said earlier, being awake is not enough. We need to be activated, forward thinking, taking concrete steps towards building the world we want, because otherwise you're just fucking selling out your kids and you're selling out your ancestors. All of us who came from this beautiful planet with our different skin colors and ethnicities and nationalities and languages and cultures and customs, each and every one of us have ancestors who had to go through blood, sweat, and tears to get us here to be alive on this planet right now. And if we choose not to act with what we know is coming, we only have ourselves to blame. And I refuse to be in that position. So I work night and day on what I think are the best solutions and encouraging people to unplug from these systems as much as possible, because I want to see you on the other side. I don't want to see another crazy, like pandemic or alien invasion or economic collapse or whatever come about, which may come about soon, and watch those of you who are quote unquote awake suffer because you didn't do shit about it. And in the end, if you suffered like all the normies, what would be the point of being awake anyways? To be bitter and to judge other people? Well, I'm so enlightened, I'm so conscious, so look at the stupid sheeple and the stupid normies. Yeah, but if you end up broke and homeless and on the streets or in the FEMA camp or suffering under tyranny because you didn't do anything, I don't know if you can call that being very awake. So I got one more story here, and let's get into it as far as Donald Trump, Larry Fink, BlackRock, and the Panama Canal. I don't know about this, guys. Let's get into this one first of all. Okay, so in case you haven't heard, BlackRock and Larry Fink are buying 2 ports in the Panama Canal for $1 billion deal. I think it's like $16 billion, something huge. And guess what? Larry Fink phoned Trump directly to pitch BlackRock's Panama deal. Because remember, Trump wants Panama as part of his whole tech native North America vision that he's bringing about. And he says they're going to take it by force or otherwise. Donald Trump promised on day one to seize the Panama Canal. We're taking it back, he declared. Within weeks, Wall Street billionaire Larry Fink was on the line with the White House. His pitch, his investment company, BlackRock Inc. You guys remember them? All the big people worried about BlackRock, and I guess now they're cool. We shouldn't worry about them. BlackRock was interested in buying the ports on either side of the waterway, shifting them into American hands, according to people familiar with the discussion. And with that, there would be no need to have the U.S. take the century-old canal by force. Now, I think it's funny they say having it shift into American hands, just because Larry Fink, I guess, is American and BlackRock is an American company based in America. That's not American hands, though. That's corporate hands, owned by an American. Oh, big deal. Now all of a sudden it's going to benefit America. And it's so obvious to me how they've convinced people that the government is the people, the corporate state is the people. So they can say it's shifting back into American hands. And the argument is, well, what would you rather do, Derrick? Would you rather people like China own it? If it's either BlackRock or China, and I'd rather it be BlackRock. Oh my God. So days of negotiations that are set to deliver the port to a consortium led by BlackRock for $11.6 trillion. Oh, excuse me. The BlackRock is $11.6 trillion investment firm that has been run by Larry Fink for almost 4 decades. As I said, the deal will be $19 billion, and it reflects an extraordinary confluence of Trump's America First vision and Wall Street's globe-spanning quest for profit. And so that shows you that Larry Fink and Trump are in regular communication. This is the head of BlackRock. These are the people who've called for all sorts of dystopian stuff. These are the people who at one point were pushing a lot of the DEI stuff that Trump has been pushing against, which shows you that so much of these fabricated cultural wedge issues are really, they're nonsensical and they don't matter in the bigger picture because they're all working together. Here's the Financial Times, the billionaire elite who answered Donald Trump's calls on Panama Canal. Larry Fink and Howley Kashing Abidoyo Agunlesi struck according to them, $22.8 billion ports deal within weeks. In an address to the nation on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump vowed that his administration would reclaim the Panama Canal and fulfill his promise. We're already started doing it, he said, thanks to a large American company. Unsurprisingly, he didn't mention it was BlackRock. He just said, thanks to an American company. But Trump was already well aware of the deal because BlackRock's $22.8 billion takeover of 43 ports owned by C.K. Hutchison, including 2 at either end of the Panama Canal. Trump already knew about it before it was announced because he and top members of his administration, including Marco Rubio, had been briefed by Larry Fink, BlackRock's own billionaire chief executive. And it just shows you how these connections are behind the scenes. Trump and Marco Rubio are meeting with Larry Fink and they're working out a deal and saying, yeah, go ahead, buy the ports, buy them all. And this will give us access and we'll work together. And I'm sure that's going to work out great for the American people. But nevertheless, when I post about this and I share, for one, when I post about it on Twitter, for the most part, nobody even, I got 105 interactions or likes, a couple comments, but people kind of ignored it as they tend to do. When I shared it on Facebook, though, I heard, well, I'd rather have BlackRock than China. And my response is, how about we stop falling into a false binary of China versus U.S. Western interests, and we start to recognize that the power at the top of the pyramid is above and beyond nation states. If you think it's China versus the US, you're still buying into false narratives. That doesn't mean they agree on everything. That doesn't mean that every disagreement is a complete hoax. But at the end of the day, the power structure is above and beyond them. And I tried to tell somebody this the other day who was trying to convince me that China is actually a beautiful, great country, which I'm sure it is, and the people are amazing, but that it's a bastion of freedom. And all the lies we've been told about limited human rights and things like that are just U.S. propaganda. And to be sure, there's definitely U.S. propaganda, just like there's Chinese propaganda against Americans and vice versa. They want us fighting each other. But you have to remember the history of the growth of China into the nation that it has become with the help of Henry Kissinger, with the help of the Rockefellers. And American interest and American money really allowed China to grow to the place it is. And Americans were happy to ignore the crimes of China as long as it benefited the U.S. in some way. So that's why I don't always take this saber rattling back and forth very seriously. I also want to point out that if you go to Whitney Webb's website, Unlimited Hangout, search Larry Fink, you can find a number of different articles that her and her partner, Mark Goodwin, have written about Larry Fink and BlackRock and their roles in the Bitcoin ETFs and that whole sector of things going on. Also want to note that if you go to the World Economic Forum website, you can find Larry Fink. He has a page here. And in fact, according to this press release from the World Economic Forum in August 2022, Lawrence Fink joined the World Economic Forum Board of Trustees. So now Trump is directly working with the CEO, the head of BlackRock, which many people think is at the close or at least top of the pyramid as far as corporations go. And he's a partner with and has spoken at numerous times at the World Economic Forum. He's having backroom deals with Marco Rubio and Trump. I'm sure it's all good news, though, if you just ignore the technocrats surrounding Trump as well. And then I found this article on Substack, which I'll include in the show notes too. Who owns the world? And it's, of course, about Panama and the BlackRock aspect of it, which I just covered if you want to go deeper into that. And just talks more about BlackRock and how, BlackRock, along with State Street and Vanguard, are these top three sort of investment firms that basically own everything in the United States and largely around the world. And people like myself and James Corbett and others have been trying to ask the question, who owns them? Because we don't even know who the private shareholders of those companies are, but we know it's like they own each other. Actually, when you start to get into that State Street, BlackRock, Vanguard, they own pieces of each other as well. And BlackRock has been in business for quite some time. Larry Fink was around during George Bush's administration, George W. Bush, the baby Bush, the dumb one. He was there during Trump's first presidency, and he's back again under Trump's second presidency. These are not positive connections, my friend. And making lesser of two evils excuses and saying, well, at least it's better than China owning it. I guess that's something if that's like how low the bar has been set. At least it's not China. It's still a guy who's connected to the World Economic Forum and who is owning everything and buying up all kinds of resources. In fact, one could argue with the BlackRock buying up real estate around the world, which I'm sure you guys have heard about the last couple of years, and with their connection to the World Economic Forum, who infamously brought us the phrase, "You will own nothing and be happy," that Larry Fink and the World Economic Forum are part of promoting and pushing out the entire "you will own nothing" agenda. You will own nothing and be happy. You'll be miserable. And if you remember back last year and the year before, the World Economic Forum and other globalist organizations like them have started to talk about how they needed to rebuild trust in government. And I know this is going to be hard for some people, because it's hard for some people, I realize, to imagine that politicians might pretend to be somebody in front of camera and then behind the scenes be secretly somebody else. I don't think it's that far off based on what we know, that politicians often get caught in saying one thing in public and then saying something else private. But could it be possible, my friends, that Donald Trump, the World Economic Forum, Larry Fink, Peter Thiel, and these other people who publicly are opposed to each other, even though Peter Thiel is a steering committee member of the Bilderberg Group is closely aligned with the World Economic Forum. Is it possible that the MAGA movement, the Maha movement, and the efforts by Elon with DOGE to shrink government to make it more efficient are a part of the same agenda to rebuild trust in government? I don't know, but I have my suspicions and my questions on that. I really appreciate everybody who has been tuning in tonight, guys. Like I said, I've been off for 2 weeks. I've been in Costa Rica. I'm just back now. If you want to go see my 3 presentations I gave in Costa Rica, go to theconsciousresistance.com, or wherever you're watching right now, you'll see them on those channels. I'm going to be putting out one more video from Costa Rica next week. I did an interview with this community I got to visit called Protopia, which I think you will enjoy. I've also got a new mini documentary about Peter Thiel and the technocrats and Trump coming out on Monday if everything goes well. And next week, we're going to be launching a new crowdfunding campaign to finish the Pyramid of Power, the 17th final episode that is stressing me the hell out as I'm trying to write it all and do my best job with all the research and all the pieces of the puzzle. Whew, it's a lot of work, guys, but I appreciate every one of you who do support my efforts. And if you want to continue to support independent media like myself, I want to invite you to go to theconsciousresistance.com/invest. This is where you can find my Buy Me a Coffee, my Substack. You could also support me with crypto if you want to do so. We closed down my P.O. box for right now, but we will be opening it soon. I appreciate getting your letters and, the cash in the mail and all the different ways you guys support. It really does mean a lot. Like I said, I don't make a lot of money doing this. I get paid for my articles at The Last American Vagabond. I don't get paid for podcasting. I don't get paid for making documentaries. I get paid a little bit once a month or so for my books that some of you out there choose to buy and share with your friends. But for the most part, I am dependent on you to continue to do this work. And I plan to reach 100,000 plus followers across various platforms. And I'm going to get to 1 million at some point soon. And I'm going to continue to spread the message of exit and build, of the conscious resistance, of the people's reset, and helping people realize that there are real solutions, but they're not in government. They are in us, the beautiful, powerful people. All we need to do is step up and claim our power, and that better world we know is possible will reach us. So I'm going to end things tonight with a brand new song. We like to do this periodically. Sometimes I cover books I'm reading. Sometimes we cover music. This is a brand new music video, guys, that just came out this week for my new song called Unwritten. If you don't know, I perform music under the name 33. 33 from you is transformation, transmutation, healing, growth, connection. And hip hop has been a really beautiful way for me to connect and share the message. It's just another form of activism for me, really. So you can go to 33ishere.com, or if you listen to music on Spotify, Apple, all the usual places, search 33 is here, and you can find this song called Unwritten. For now, though, guys, enjoy this brand new music video, which was filmed here in Morelia, Mexico, at the People's Reset with a bunch of friends. Check out the lyrics on the bottom of the page. Check out the message. Enjoy it. I'll see you guys next week, probably Monday night. And until then, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
33. Present. Doing it again. Yeah. I can't believe this is my life and I'm on top. I had to hit rock bottom and I didn't stop. Fell to the floor, crashed to the depths of hell. Made so many mistakes, but my soul ain't for sale. Forgive myself, forgive those who crossed me. Not like I'm keeping score, but I keep coming up empty. There's a big world out here, waiting to be discovered. There's so many hidden truths, waiting to be uncovered. There's no going back, the future's unwritten. We can keep trying, but there's no use preventing. Creator has a plan, and I'm ready to embrace my destiny in this journey through time and space. There's no going back, the future's unwritten. You can keep trying, but there's no use preventing. Creator has a plan, and it's time to embrace your destiny in this journey through time and space. You ever feel like you got a bigger mission to fulfill? There's too much to do, can't get caught sitting still. I know I'm meant to be more than a cog in the machine. Not sure where I'm headed, but I'm more than I seem. They say the grass ain't always greener, but I gotta find out. Get to the other side so I can erase my doubt. I'm tuned into my purpose, no more feeling worthless. No more wasting time, asking if I deserve this. This is my moment to show my full potential. This is my one shot, so I'm done being sinful. I feel nothing but gratitude, just anticipating. I know I can take on anything I'm facing. There's no going back, the future's unwritten. We can keep trying, but there's no use preventing. Creator has a plan, and I'm ready to embrace my destiny in this journey through time and space. There's no going back, the future's unwritten. You can keep trying, but there's no use preventing. Creator has a plan, and it's time to embrace your destiny in this journey through time and space.
You ever feel like you're capable of more? Saw a vision, yet you make the same decisions before. Feeling like a couple version of yourself a reward. The one that's complacent and the one that's awake in the soul. Yeah, highest priority life force. Only giving my body what it was designed for. Higher dimensional consciousness, I know I got to explore. Higher priority is a inner peace I got to restore. All the bullshit on the big shoot, from the fear porn to the fake news. With the clickbait for the most views, gonna distract from the real you. Gotta break the cycle of attachment addiction. And the story now of it remains unwritten.
There's no going back, the future's unwritten. We can keep trying, but there's no use preventing. Creator has a plan, and I'm ready to embrace my destiny in this journey through time and space. There's no going back, the future's unwritten. You can keep trying, but there's no use preventing. Creator has a plan, and it's time to embrace your destiny in this journey through time and space. I stand for the 7 generations, original First Nations. Call onto your ancestors and ask for patience. Can't stop climbing in the face of these obstacles. The truth's within each of us like the Gnostic Gospels. And yes, it's true that time is running low, but we determine our future with the seeds we sow. So let's keep building the world of our dreams as we watch Babylon come apart at the seams. Watch Babylon come apart at the seams. Watch Babylon come apart at the seams. Watch Babylon come apart at the seams.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.